It started with a statement, one sentence, but it was enough to shake the world. Donald Trump sat on stage, microphone in hand, his expression unwavering. The room was packed, the cameras were rolling, and millions were watching live. Then he said it. If I were president, this war would have never happened. Silence, a pause, and then he doubled down. And if I were in charge right now, I'd end it in 24 hours. Done. Over. Just like that. The audience erupted, some in cheers, some in shock, and others in disbelief. But it was already too late. The words had left his mouth, and within minutes they had traveled across the world. Breaking news flashes across screens. Trump claims he can end Ukraine war in 24 hours. Is he serious? Trump says Zelensky made a mistake, blames NATO for war. Biden admin responds, Trump has no idea what he's talking about. Social media exploded. Every major news channel replayed the clip, analyzing it from every angle. Supporters called him the only leader bold enough to speak the truth. Critics called it reckless, irresponsible. And in Kiev, Volodymyr Zelensky was watching. He sat at his desk, eyes locked on the screen, as reporters played Trump's words on repeat. His advisors muttered in the background, some angry, some laughing it off. But Zelensky, he wasn't laughing. He leaned forward. Then he made a decision. Just hours later, he issued a challenge. Zelensky, public statement. If Donald Trump thinks he can end this war in 24 hours, let him come to Ukraine and prove it. The moment the words left his mouth, the world held its breath. Would Trump accept? Would he ignore it? Was this just political theater, or was something bigger happening? The tension was thick. Everyone waited for Trump's response. Then suddenly, Trump's private jet was spotted preparing for departure. And just like that, the world knew. Trump was coming. The world was waiting. Would Trump respond? Would he ignore Zelensky's challenge? Was this just another headline, or was something real about to happen? Then Trump went live on air. The cameras zoomed in. His expression? Unshaken, confident, unapologetic. Trump, calm, firm. You know what? Fine, I'll go. But let me be clear, I'm not going there to play games. I'm going there to tell Zelensky the truth. The moment those words left his mouth, the world exploded. Breaking news alerts flooded screens. Trump accepts Zelensky's challenge. Unbelievable. Biden admin shocked as Trump announces Ukraine visit. NATO in crisis mode after Trump's bold move. Inside the White House Situation Room, the mood was tense. Leaked White House reaction. We need to stop this. If Trump actually steps foot in Ukraine, it changes everything. Political analysts, government officials, even foreign leaders, everyone scrambled to react. Some called it reckless. Others said it was genius. One thing was certain. This wasn't just talk anymore. The moment Trump announced his trip, security concerns skyrocketed. Former Secret Service official. This is a nightmare. A former U.S. president traveling into an active war zone? It's unheard of. Critics warned of disaster. Pentagon statement. We strongly advise against any non-official diplomatic visits to Ukraine at this time. But Trump? He didn't back down. When reporters asked if he was worried about security risks, his response was classic Trump. Trump, smirking, I'll be fine. It's the corrupt politicians who should be scared, not me. And with that, he was on the move. Hours later, a private jet sat on the tarmac at a New York airfield. A line of black SUVs rolled up, headlights piercing the night. The engines roared to life. And then, he stepped out. Dressed in a dark suit, Donald Trump walked towards his plane. Cameras flashed. Reporters shouted questions. But he didn't stop. He climbed the stairs, paused at the entrance, and looked straight ahead. No words. Just a nod. Then, he disappeared inside. Live flight trackers went crazy. News anchors stared in disbelief as they reported the unthinkable. CNN breaking news. Donald Trump is officially on his way to Ukraine. Inside Kiev, Zelensky was already preparing. Trump was coming, and nothing would ever be the same again. The world held its breath. Trump's plane had landed. The armored convoy had moved through Poland, then across the Ukrainian border. Every road was shut down. Every route was monitored. Inside Kiev, security was at maximum alert, and deep beneath the city, inside a heavily fortified bunker, two men sat across from each other. Donald Trump, Volodymyr Zelensky. No cameras, no media, no advisors. Just two leaders, face to face. The room was cold, dimly lit, the walls thick with steel and concrete. Outside, the faint sound of air raid sirens echoed through the night. Then Zelensky broke the silence. Zelensky, leaning forward, serious. "You said you could end this war in 24 hours. Tell me how." His voice was sharp. "Director, he wasn't here for political games." "Trump?" He didn't blink. He let the moment hang in the air. Then he spoke. "Trump, calm, controlled. You walked into the worst deal in history, and now your country is paying the price." Zelensky's eyes narrowed. Zelensky, pushing back. "You think this is my fault?" Trump, leaning in, voice unwavering. "I think you trusted the wrong people, and now they've left you to fight their war." The air shifted. Zelensky's jaw clenched. He wasn't used to this. World leaders spoke carefully, measured words, diplomatic tones. But Trump? He was coming in hard. "Zelensky," his voice rising, "you have no idea what it's like to fight for survival. You sat in Washington making speeches. 'My people are dying.'" Trump, sharp, cutting in. "And how many more will die before you realize you're being used?" Zelensky's face tightened. Trump, pressing on. "You think NATO cares about Ukraine? You think Biden does? You're a pawn. They promised you everything, but they gave you nothing. And now, they're watching from the sidelines while your cities burn." Zelensky's hands curled into fists. Was this a negotiation or a confrontation? Because right now it was starting to feel like war. The room was thick with tension. Two leaders, two worlds, sitting just feet apart, but separated by something much bigger, the weight of war. Zelensky's fingers tapped the table. His jaw was tight, his breathing steady but controlled. He was ready to fight, but Trump? He wasn't flinching. Zelensky, pushing back, voice tense. "So you think I should just surrender?" Trump, shaking his head, voice firm. "No. I think you need to wake up." Zelensky's eyes burned. Trump, leaning forward, voice sharp. "Tell me something, Volodymyr. Where are they?" Zelensky blinked, confused. Trump, pressing on louder now. "Where is NATO? Where is the EU? Where is Biden?" Zelensky didn't answer. Trump, mocking. "They said they'd stand with you. They said they'd protect Ukraine. And yet, here you are, alone." Zelensky's fist tightened. Trump, cutting deep. "They promised you everything, but they gave you nothing, and you still don't see it." Silence. For the first time, Zelensky didn't have a response. Deep inside NATO headquarters, officials were watching. Every intelligence agency had been monitoring Trump's visit. Every leader waiting, panicked about what would come next. Leaked NATO communication. If Trump convinces Zelensky to negotiate, this war changes overnight. Because here's the truth. War means control. War means money. War means power. If Zelensky listened to Trump, NATO would lose everything. Zelensky, gritting his teeth, voice rising. "You have no idea what you're saying." Trump, calm, controlled. "Oh, I know exactly what I'm saying." Zelensky, pushing back, almost shouting now. "You think we don't want peace? You think I haven't tried?" Trump, shaking his head. "I think you've tried to please the wrong people." Zelensky stared at him. He wanted to argue, but deep down he knew there was truth in Trump's words. Trump delivering the punchline. "You're fighting their war, but it's your people who are dying." The shocking demand. Zelensky, shaking his head, furious. "What do you expect me to do? Kneel to Putin?" Trump, shaking his head. "No, I expect you to think." Trump, voice low, but deadly serious. "You need to make a real deal before Ukraine is destroyed." The room went ice cold. Trump leaned in, closer, firmer. Trump, "Because let me tell you something. Every war ends with a deal." Zelensky said nothing. Trump, soft but firm. "The only question is how much of your country will be left when you finally sign it." The world reacts outside. The internet exploded. News alerts. Trump's shocking words leave Zelensky speechless. NATO officials in panic mode. This is dangerous. Trump says, make a deal before Ukraine is destroyed. What does he mean? Inside NATO, leaders were in a frenzy. NATO insider leaked audio. If Ukraine listens to Trump, this war is over. Because for the first time since it all began, someone had said the quiet part out loud. The room was thick with tension. Zelensky sat motionless, his fist clenched, his mind racing. Trump had just dropped a truth bomb that no other world leader had dared to say out loud. Make a deal before Ukraine is destroyed. Those words echoed in the underground bunker like a siren, ringing in Zelensky's ears. Trump had come without hesitation. He had walked into a war zone, sat face to face with the leader of a country under attack, and told him something no NATO official, no EU diplomat, no American president had ever told him. Trump, standing up, adjusting his suit. That's all I have to say. He turned toward the door, ready to leave. But just as he reached for the handle, Zelensky spoke. Zelensky, voice softer but sharp. Do you really believe peace is possible? Trump stopped. For the first time in the entire meeting, there was no anger, no debate, no tension. Just that one question. A question that wasn't political. It wasn't about deals or power. It was about something bigger. Trump didn't turn around immediately. He let the moment sit. Then slowly, he turned back towards Zelensky. And what he said next changed everything. Trump, calm, steady. It's always possible. He stepped closer. Trump, lower but firm. But only if you want it more than war. Zelensky's face tightened. He opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. Because deep down in the part of him that was a soldier, not just a president, he knew Trump wasn't lying. The world talks about war like it's inevitable, like it's uncontrollable. But history proves something else. Every war ends the same way, with a deal, a handshake, a signature on a piece of paper. The only question is how much is destroyed before that moment comes. And Trump, he was forcing Zelensky to face that reality. How much more will be lost before the war finally ends? Outside the bunker, reporters, security teams, and world leaders waited. Cameras were locked on the bunker doors. Inside White House war rooms, NATO headquarters, and European embassies, phones were ringing nonstop. Leaked NATO official statement: we need to control the fallout. If Ukraine listens to Trump, everything shifts. Because this wasn't just a meeting anymore. It was a turning point. For the first time since the war started, someone had looked Zelensky in the eye and forced him to confront the truth. Not about soldiers, not about weapons, not about strategies, but about the end. The end of war, the end of destruction, and the real question that no one dared ask. When will that moment come? Trump turned back to the door, reached for the handle once again. This time, Zelensky didn't stop him. But as Trump pulled the door open, he did something unexpected. He turned back one last time. Trump, final words softer this time. Don't let them use you, Volodymyr. Then he walked out. The cameras outside? They went crazy. Reporters shouted questions. Security rushed to escort Trump back to his convoy. And inside the bunker, Zelensky sat there, silent. The war was still raging. The bombs were still falling. But something had changed, because for the first time, Zelensky wasn't just thinking about fighting. He was thinking about how it could end. The media erupted. Inside Washington, D.C., the White House was scrambling. Inside NATO headquarters, panic spread. NATO official leaked conversation. If Ukraine starts negotiating, this war is over. Because this was their biggest fear, that Zelensky, after everything, would finally start to see the bigger picture. This wasn't about politics. This wasn't about Trump versus Biden. This was about truth. Every war ends with a deal. But at what cost? And the real question? When does the fighting stop? Zelensky had spent months believing in one thing: victory at all costs. But now, for the first time, he wasn't so sure. And that changed everything. The world was on fire. Every major news outlet, every political analyst, every government official, they were all talking about one thing: Trump, Ukraine, the meeting that changed everything. People weren't just reacting. They were questioning. Because for the first time, someone had gone straight to Kyiv, looked Zelensky in the eye, and asked the question no one else had dared to ask. How much more must be destroyed before this war finally ends? And now, the world wanted answers. Inside the White House, the reaction was immediate. Meetings were called. Officials scrambled to get ahead of the story. Leaked White House statement. The former president does not speak for the United States. Our support for Ukraine remains strong. Secretary of State, emergency press briefing. Trump's words do not reflect official U.S. policy. We stand with Ukraine and NATO. But behind closed doors, panic. Because Trump's visit had done something they didn't expect. It had shifted the conversation. For the first time, people weren't just asking how to win. They were asking if this war should even continue. Inside NATO headquarters, the mood was even worse. Leaked NATO memo. Trump's visit has raised concerns among our allies. We must ensure Ukraine remains committed to the fight. That was it. The one thing NATO didn't want, for Ukraine to start questioning its role in this war. Because if Zelensky hesitated, if he even considered negotiation, it was over. Then came the polls. New poll results. CNN, Reuters. 67% of Americans say they want the war in Ukraine to end as soon as possible. 53% believe the U.S. has given too much aid to Ukraine. 72% say Trump's visit changed the conversation on Ukraine. This was not supposed to happen. For over a year, the war had been painted as black and white, good versus evil, democracy versus dictatorship. But Trump's visit had introduced something dangerous. Doubt. People were thinking for themselves. Governments scrambled to control the damage. European Union statement. The war in Ukraine is not up for negotiation. The West must stand firm. UK Prime Minister, live interview. Trump is wrong. Putin must be defeated no matter how long it takes. But the problem? It wasn't politicians who controlled the conversation anymore. It was the people. And they were starting to wake up. The questions wouldn't stop. And for the first time, neither would the doubts. This was no longer just about one meeting. This was about power, influence, control. This wasn't about strategy anymore. It was about momentum. The longer Trump's words stayed in the headlines, the more people started to question everything, the more dangerous it became for those who wanted this war to continue. And now, a new terrifying question was spreading. What if Trump is right? This was never just about Donald Trump versus Volodymyr Zelensky. This was about power versus leadership. Because wars don't just happen. They are allowed to happen. And peace, it doesn't come from politicians. It comes when people demand it. For over a year, the world was told there was only one option. Fight, send weapons, fund the war, win at all costs. But Trump did something no leader had done before. He walked into the center of the storm, sat across from a wartime president, and asked the one question no one wanted to hear. How much more must be destroyed before this war finally ends? That question, it shattered the illusion. Because the truth is, every war ends the same way. A deal, a handshake, a signature on a piece of paper. But the difference? Some wars end after weeks of fighting. Some wars end after years of destruction. Some wars don't end until there's nothing left to save. So the real question isn't about Russia or Ukraine. It isn't about NATO. It isn't about Biden. It isn't even about Trump. The real question is simple. When does the fighting stop? Because make no mistake, this war will end. The only thing left to decide is how much will be lost before that moment finally comes. And that's not up to governments anymore. That's up to the people. It's up to you. If you believe wars don't have to last forever, hit that like button. If you believe peace is possible, drop a comment below. Should this war end now? Yes or no? And if you believe the truth should be heard, subscribe and turn on notifications because we're just getting started. Because at the end of the day, the world doesn't change when leaders make decisions. It changes when people demand better. And maybe, just maybe, that time is now.